This is the High Desert Luthiery podcast with luthier Chuck Schlesinger.
I think if I'm using paints, I'd like to just do stuff that's going to catch people's eye, whether it be graphics on it that are different. The one graffiti guitar that I had at the show where I did a clear hammered finish on it. And it was like, you wouldn't expect to feel a hammered finish on a guitar. And it was kind of something different, just I like when somebody picks something up and they go, ooh, I didn't expect that.
Welcome to another episode of the High Desert Luthiery podcast. I'm Perry from Albuquerque Guitars and the creator of the High Desert Luthiery Invitational, or HDLI for short. This show will happen twice a year in celebration of luthiers, luthier-adjacent creators, musicians, and the art that comes from combining these things. The HDLI is a unique event that encourages actual support in the music community by providing free booths to the vendors and free admission to the public. The event includes vendors and musicians that are curated by me to create a cohesive, organized event. The HDLI encourages community and collaboration amongst the artists. This podcast is one way to help us get to know one another. To learn more about the show and artists, please visit the website highdesertluthiery.com. All right. Joining me today is Chuck Schlesinger, and I don't want to ruin his brand name, so I'll let him do the introductions. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm pretty good. Just hanging out, doing some interviews today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I reached out to the guys at Walrus Oil to ask them a bunch of questions about that, and about the product and stuff over stain and stuff. And so it's interesting because they said if you use the wood butter, then you shouldn't, or they don't recommend using an additional wax on top of that, which I thought was interesting.
I like to hear what all the companies think, but very few of them, especially when they're doing food grade stuff, which is what they specialize in. They're not dyeing anything, so it's really, that's sort of like a new adventure. And even in talks with different craftspeople that stop into the wood shop, they're trying to figure out how to dye stuff or how to get colors instead of staining it. And so, it's a really interesting thing because my practice has always been dye. And, just talking with people about this, it's interesting to hear what the practices are around it. But for the most part, the recipe that I settled on ended up being a dye and then a wax. Just kind of rub the excess wax off, kind of polish it up a bit, and then more dye.
Okay.
And then that layer of dye kind of ends up in the wax. And it just kind of solidifies the color. And then I ended up using a wipe-on poly. And it wiped away some of the color. Unless you're spraying, I think it's impossible to get away with sealing in the color without removing it. But the saturation was a lot better overall.
Yeah.
And I'd like to mess around with it more because the wipe-on poly was a gloss, a full gloss, and it ended up coming out kind of flat.
Okay.
And that kind of surprised me. But I don't really care for full gloss. I just bought it because that's all was at the store and I wanted to try it out. But it's interesting. I used to always tell people not to mix products, and I find myself mixing more products these days and with great success. So I'm still trying to figure it out, and I haven't had too much time back in my garage, but I just get in there when I can, do a little bit, and check it in a few days.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at, just with everything going on. So, but I'll definitely share the results with you.
Absolutely. As soon as that stuff comes, I ordered a bunch of stuff, so I'm gonna try to play around with it and see what I can come up with. And then I was reading the other day about resin stabilized dyes.
Oh, yeah.
You know much about that? It was it's cool. You got to have a vacuum system to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've never done it on part that it takes too much equipment. But like I was just looking at another one of the builders who's coming to the show. He posted some pictures of some. I'm pretty sure they're like they're stabilized top woods, like different
Mhm.
burls, and they are amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, like we have a vendor from the wood shop that we send out knife scales to get stabilized and get that dye to saturate. And they're pretty cool, but like the guys that are doing multicolors and all that stuff, holy smokes,
Yeah.
man. That is so cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. I ran across it and I read about it and I was like, I don't know that much about it. Then took like kind of a deep dive one evening, and then I was like, oh, that's really neat. Some of the stuff these people are doing. And I knew that knife scales that they did that a lot. And, but I was like, interesting as far as, with musical instruments, could you do that and how well did it work? And I saw that there was some very nice examples.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff ends up being really, really dense. Really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if I was going to use one of those tops, I would most likely use it on body wood that was really soft
Mm-hmm.
to kind of balance it out. So like Spanish cedar would be a great pairing.
Mm-hmm.
Even mahogany would probably be a great pairing because the harder, more dense it is, the brighter it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to balance that out. But I was looking at that going, man, do I want to get into that? I don't know. Like that's so cool. Um,
Yeah.
I just love seeing what people are doing, now that technology, everything is easier to get these days.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got the bucks, especially, you can set up and start doing all this yourself or just
Yeah.
order from people that are already doing it. And it's pretty amazing, so we don't get too far without officially starting
Yes.
the interview. I've decided that I always appreciate a really good introduction from a host, and I
Mm-hmm.
just don't have those chops yet. But go ahead and introduce yourself for everyone that does not know you.
Well, I'm Chuck Schlesinger, and I'm here out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I build under the name Sadilah Handmade Guitars. That's my intro. That's kind of who I am.
All right. So I got your name wrong. So this last show was kind of the first time we all met each other.
Mm-hmm.
We being everyone, all the builders involved in the show. And I think like I'd met maybe one or two of the builders prior to that, but it was pretty much the first time we all met.
Yeah.
We didn't really get a chance to socialize because it was a fairly busy event. And that's usually how those things go. But we got your name wrong, and we were both looking at each other because of the face. I think your wife was like, "It's this way,"
Yeah.
and but being polite usually takes over, and I was just like going, "Oh, damn it!"
It's all right. My brother messes it up all the time too. He'll say instead of Sadilah, he'll say Sadilah. I mean, yeah, it's like my regular last name. It's a difficult one if you're uninitiated to know how it's supposed to sound. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, the tendency for like Latinos is, Sadia. And
yeah, right,
so
right.
like, can you tell us about the name, where it comes from?
So it's actually a conjugation of my two daughters' names. So I have one daughter whose official name is Mercedes, but we call her Sadie. And then my other daughter's name is Lila. And so when I started building bike frames back in the early 2000s, I took those two names, put them together, and that's how I got it. So half of one's name, half of the other.
Oh, right on. That's
Yeah.
really cool. I love getting these stories. I really do. There's been some very cool moments, and it's just great, especially when it has that much meaning to you.
Yeah. And it's a topic of conversation with most people like, oh, where'd that come? Is that, a Middle Eastern name where, they have no idea. And so that's where it kind of came from.
And so we've met, after the show and hung out for a bit. And so I know a little bit more about you. So I know you were making custom bicycles, and it's so amazing when people come from different trades or, highly skilled creative situations. Do you feel like that industry influenced your guitar work?
It did in the fact of how I think about a musical instrument and a guitar. And you and I kind of had this conversation where with, guitars, your only set parameters are scale length, right? And then everything else is kind of up to you really on what you want to do, other than not messing around with that. And in creating bicycles, it was kind of the same thing. You have set parameters with regard to geometry where you can play around within certain limits. But then with regard to aesthetics or style or use and stuff, that all then is an open, clean slate. And so, I think that kind of has carried over for me, and I'm still trying to find my legs in the musical instrument because it's something that's different from what I did. It, obviously different medium. Instead of hot torch and steel, it's wood and instruments that take away wood. And so it's close, but somewhat different. And I think just the perspective. And for me, it's kind of the perspective on the community, which I think is really interesting because I see some parallels between the custom bike world versus the handmade guitar world versus the industry norm, and also, within how individuals interact with each other within both of those sections. So yeah, a lot of parallels, but then some differences too.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about that. To go further into that, the way that I heard it, and I could be mistaken, so the industry sort of shaping like what is popular, like what people might be into, with that sort of idea, like guitar makers. They'll look at what's popular, what's selling, perhaps in the music stores, or what's popular in the magazines, and kind of base their next moves on that. How does that affect your designs and decisions around let's say, what hardware, what materials to use?
It's interesting because there are parallels on both and in both industries. And now I'm finding out definitely in the guitar world that, what is put out by the larger industry, by the name brands, what somebody sees when they walk into a Guitar Center or whatever, that much of the public then views that as what they want, right? And I think the struggle sometimes comes from somebody who, like myself or you or other builders that say, I want to build something different. And there's a liability to that somewhat because it's going to be different than what that person sees. And therefore, they don't really understand. They just see it as being different, but it may not be what they are striving to get. So I understand the motivation for a builder to say, I want to build Strats that look like Fenders, and I want to build Tellys that look like Fenders, and I want to build, semi-hollow bodies that look like Gibsons, because the majority of people that are looking at guitars and that are wanting to play guitars are seeing what are in the stores and seeing what their, idols or what the musicians that they like to follow are playing. So it definitely dictates. And on the bike world, it was kind of the same thing. It was very dictated by huge companies like Trek or Schwinn or, any number of the larger companies that said, this is what a bicycle should look like. And we see in guitars, this is what a guitar should look like. And when you buck that trend in whatever way it might be, whether it be body shape, whether it be finish, as you and I talked about, there's the industry is smooth as glass, looks like a car. It's very different from what I saw, looking around at the builders that were at the last show. Stuff that you do, stuff that I'm starting to find myself doing more of. But I think that there's some magic in that too, because then when people can get exposed to that, they can say, wow, I can have something different. I can have something very unique, as long as it obviously, plays as well or better, hopefully, than what they would buy in the store. And I think the hard part is that the truth is the majority of the buying public, taking out kind of the higher end musicians, don't know what they don't know, right? A mass produced factory guitar performs well. It has its idiosyncrasies. The finishes are usually, from at least the not the real discerning eye, are fantastic, and they look good, and they're shiny, and they're smooth, and everything. And so that is the norm. And I think that doesn't matter what industry you're in. I think people are always looking at this is what the norm is. And when somebody comes with something that's different, they're like, what the heck? Does it play the same? Does it not? Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, your and I conversations about education, really education of the musician out there, that, hey, there's an alternative, and this alternative in many ways is much, much better. And it all depends upon if you want to step over that boundary and do that. And I think it's tough for some people. You can't expect everybody to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You had some good points there. I feel like it's kind of consumer culture that kind of drives decision making, unless you've decided that, I want to wake up and make my own decisions, and, I'm not afraid to be a little different.
Yeah.
And especially with finish work, I feel like it's so towards the end, it really dictates what the final product is going to be. And to a luthier, like, that's where we start making decisions about how we want the instrument to feel, how we want it to sound, and we might go against the norm. What are some ways that you are going against the norm? I feel like the few conversations we've had, it's been about sort of like going against the norm of the industry.
Yeah.
So, like, keeping that in mind, what are you doing different with your instruments? Like, for example, we got materials, we got finishes, and for anyone not in the know, when we say finishes, we're talking paint or any sort of coating you are putting on a guitar or not putting on a guitar. Hardware. Tell us some of the things that you're doing that aren't necessarily being done in the big box shops.
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, as I said, I'm kind of I'm getting my legs underneath me with regard to this kind of stuff. I think, because I build electric basses and guitars, and so I think from my wood choice, I've gravitated. One of my favorite wood choice is Spanish cedar, which is not traditionally an electric guitar wood, so to speak. It's more of a classical acoustic guitar wood. And so I've kind of gravitated toward that. I like the feel of it. I love working with it. I think that people who pick up some of my guitars that have Spanish cedar bodies and Spanish cedar necks are amazed on how light they are. So I think that's a little bit different. I do, I've just finished earlier this year a bass that was 100% Spanish cedar, and it was kind of an experiment for me to see what would happen with the neck under tension like that. And I reinforced it, so that was something that I just felt needed to be done. I like to play around with materials. I like to do inlays with stone, stone, and set it with resin. And right now I'm also just playing with body shapes to try to do it, and then final finishes, trying to figure out that balance between something that feels really good in the hand, but also will hold up to normal use. Nothing will hold up to abuse. You can take anything and smash a guitar and it'll get beat up. But I like to do that. I mean, I think if I'm using paints, I'd like to just do stuff that's going to catch people's eye, whether it be graphics on it that are different. The one graffiti guitar that I had at the show, where I did a clear hammered finish on it. And it was like, you wouldn't expect to feel a hammered finish on a guitar. And it was kind of something different, I like when somebody picks something up and they go, ooh, I didn't expect that, whatever it might be.
Yeah, right on. That's a very good answer. You actually nailed everything that I was trying to get at.
Okay, well, good.
Especially with the Spanish cedar. And I've got experience with Spanish cedar and electric guitars, but not very much. And feel like one of the things that I really encourage people builders to do, is if you find a material that really resonates with you. That you just like, I really love working with this material, stick with it. There's sort of like two approaches to guitar making. Like, simply there's the approach of this is my recipe and I'm going to stick with it because I know what it's going to sound like, how it's going to feel. That recipe would be, I'm going to make these all out of Spanish cedar, and I'll know roughly how it's going to sound. And when I change the pickups, I'll know, sort of be able to expect what I'm going to, get. The other way would be to have a sound in mind and use the materials to try and get there. And that's just how I look at it. And I'm sure other builders will be saying and commenting, oh, well, there's this approach and there's that approach. But like, quite simply, that's kind of how I look at it. And we talked a bit about that, briefly. So when did you start making guitars?
I built my first guitar in 2018, and it was a kind of I don't know, it was just one of those things. I was playing around. I am by no means an accomplished guitarist in any way, and I was kind of getting more into it again. And around 2016, I was starting to play again and do things. And then all of a sudden I was like, I can do this. I think I can make one of these, and I hadn't really taken like an internet dive to see who was out there. And then all of a sudden, you go on YouTube and there was a billion guys building guitars. And I was like, all right, obviously it's not too difficult to do. And I'm pretty handy. And so I basically dove into it. My first guitar that I made, I did the body. I purchased a neck because I was terrified to make a neck. It was one of those things. It was like, I think it's going to be too complicated. Somebody I had spoken to at that time, they were like, oh, no, don't try to make your own neck. It's going to be hard. It's going to be this. You need to just do it. And I had no idea. Right. And I went, okay, fine. So I built the first one, and then I was like, okay, great. I'm like, all right, now I'm going to do a neck. And then I did it, and I was like, that's not that hard. I don't know what the whole big deal was, right? It just takes a while. And now it's actually one of my favorite things when I build. It's one of those things that carving a neck is that Zen thing for me. I go into my workshop, I have music going, and it's my world, And I started, and then kind of I built a couple guitars, and then in like 2019, I also started building little basically cigar box guitars because they were quick. I could kick them out. They were great presents to give to people without a lot of money and effort to put into them. And I really loved it. And I found this like really huge cigar box community that we have in the US, and I probably worldwide. And so I kind of fell into that, and then continued on with my progression at building 6-string electrics. And then, like I said, did my first bass about 8 months ago, and was very pleasantly surprised that I really enjoyed building a bass. And I know I'm going to be building more of them. A little bit different, and I kind of liked it. But, I kind of have dove into it, and, keep acquiring more machinery and trying things out. And every guitar I try to do something different, or to push my own limits a little bit and try something that I haven't done before. And I'll be the first to admit that I look at things that other people do and go, all right, that's kind of cool. How can I do that? And how can I put my own spin on it without being, blatant plagiarism? But it's been a fun journey for me, and meeting people in the community and doing the things that we're doing, and then getting people to play guitars, play my guitars. And that's, to me, is the most gratifying aspect of it, is seeing somebody else that has way more talent than I have, actually be able to pick something up and that I made and make it sound good,
Yeah,
So,
very cool. Very cool. Before we get on to your designs, I'd like to touch just on the Spanish cedar again, because I feel like It's a really great material. Can you describe the sound that comes out of it? Like if you're going to compare it to, I feel like we're all familiar with the sound of alder and maple
Mhm.
in tellies and strats. So
Yeah.
if you're going to compare it to that Fender sound, what would you have to say
Ooh.
about Spanish cedar?
I find it's bright and if this makes sense, bright and warm at the same time. That's how I kind of feel because it's a very resonant wood. And that gets into the whole argument of does wood make a difference in electric guitars and stuff, and that's a whole other thing. But I feel that it's a very clean. It produces a very clean sound. If that's the only way I can really do it, and I feel that you can, if it makes sense, you can feel the sound. Does
Very
that make
good.
sense?
Yeah, very good. So, like to acclimate the listeners to the lingo, there's sort of characteristic ways to describe stuff. So, Fender guitar is going to be snappy.
Mm-hmm.
Snappy would refer to the attack on it on a Fender style guitar tends to be really fast, really immediate, which can often be associated with brightness.
Mm-hmm.
And those, especially in an ash body fender, ash is usually pretty dense unless it's southern ash or swamp ash.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has that sort of light, porous characteristic to it, which is usually a lot more resonant. And
Mm-hmm.
Spanish cedar being a lot more airy, similar to swamp ash, that's where that resonance comes from to me. And so that warmth, it's sort of like it goes hand in hand with that light airiness, or open pore system, similar to mahogany, which mahogany is usually characteristically warm toned. To me, it's kind of off balance, but you will get like really dense pieces that are pretty bright.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's where that it's bright and warm,
Yeah.
and comes from. And I think that resonance, that ability for it to resonate so well, is also a big driving force in this feels really good because I can feel it. And it's really interesting when you consider Spanish cedar for a neck.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of I think a lot of companies look for more rigid species
Yeah.
for necks that aren't necessarily resonating. So it's a very interesting decision to, in a way, go against that. It doesn't mean it can't work.
Yeah.
And it's definitely working for you. So what's in a design is sort of my question to myself. I'm just remembering the Striga design of yours. What went into the creation of that? What was your thought process?
Yeah. You know, I was looking at it. It's kind of, it's somewhat of an offset design. I wanted something that was not not your typical. I don't necessarily want, even though I do build guitars that are very classic in their design, right? A Telecaster that looks like a Telecaster and has a Telecaster shape, so to speak. But I kind of, when I was thinking about that and the other offset design that I do, the Demona, it was kind of like I wanted something that was going to be different and different, that it could be picked out of a lineup as not being the same as everything else that's out there. And also something that, to me, I felt, at least myself, was pleasing to the eye. And I think that was kind of how I looked at it initially when I started drawing things up. And I basically took big butcher paper, and I think when I came up with that one originally, I had taken a template for a Stratocaster, threw it down on there, outlined it very lightly in pencil, and then changed it. Just said, I don't want this, I don't want that. I'm going to move this here, I'm going to move that there. And then I probably went through, I started cutting them out. So I did them on poster board. I cut them out in my garage. I had, 5, 6 different versions of it just sitting there, right? And then I put a neck that I had, I'd throw it on there, and I'd say, what does that look like? Well, I don't like that. Let me look at this one. And I kept doing it. And then I get my scissors out and I start cutting things off. And it just was finally getting to a point that I went, all right, I like the way that looks. And then at that point, I asked some people. I said, I would snap pictures and I'd send it to a couple of people that I knew. I'm like, what do you think of just the outline of this? And they were like, looks a little weird, but I like it. And I just like things that aren't normal. I mean, to me, if that makes sense, I want things to be identifiable that I did it, I guess. And I guess that's where I'm still working on. I'm very happy with the body shapes, though I'm playing around now more with the contours that go around with those primary shapes that the bodies are. And again, it's being a handmade instrument, everyone is slightly different, and I change things all the time, and no two are exactly the same. And when I have somebody, I can pick it up and feel it and stuff, but then I like to just give it to somebody and say, what does it feel like? And then they go, oh yeah, I like the feel, or no, it doesn't really fit me, and I take that feedback. I have very thick skin. So, I allow people to, I tell them, don't hold back. If it stinks, if you don't like it, if you got a problem with it, tell me right off the bat, and we'll see, if it's something that I feel is changed or not, or can be changed. And so that's kind of my process. It's a process of first doing something that's pleasing to me, and then looking to see if it's pleasing to other people. Obviously, if I make a creation and I'm the only one who likes it, then I've got a whole bunch of guitars that I have in my house. And if I build guitars that other people, are excited about in one way or another, and obviously looks, feel, and sound are the kind of the trifecta, then I'm successful in that. So yeah, it's trial and error, and it's kind of just what I look, but I like to do things that are different. I love vintage guitars, and I like, looking at vintage guitars and seeing, like, especially the crazy shapes that came out of Japan in the late 60s. I love those. The other guitars that are kind of crazy and shape wise that I think are the old Soviet electric guitars. Obviously horrible instruments, but just the shapes were cool because they just didn't want to follow any convention with a lot of it. So yeah, those are kind of things that kind of turn me on to doing things. And that's what brings me and gets me excited about other builders. I see, like I see your guitars, and not try to stroke it because you're doing the interview, but I love just visually the shapes and the feel and your finish and the finishes and things like that. And it's things that get my wheels turning and get me start thinking about, well, I could do something like that, but I want to do it my way. And so that's the excitement I think about, like, this community, and why I think it's so important to have contact with other people. It's easy, I think, to be on your own little island. And I think that can be in any industry that you're in. You're in your own little island. You don't really discuss or talk or see anything unless you're, seeing things online or you're seeing things at shows. But for me, it's talking with other people and being open. There are no secrets. Anything can be figured out, but it's like, you know what, you got a question for me? I'm going to tell you exactly how I did it. I have nothing to hide. And if you want to copy it, go right ahead, just throw your own spin on it. So, that's where it is. So I'm influenced, I think, by a lot of different things. And I think that just making something that looks pleasing and different. Again, as we've said, you and I had a conversation about walking into Guitar Center and just seeing row after row of instruments that all look the same. They're different colors, different finishes maybe, but they're pretty much all the same. And I like that, I think at the Invitational, in December, it was just so cool to see what people were doing. I've never personally been to like a NAMM show, so I don't know what kind of stuff is there in the other sections that are the non-big industry. I only know what I see on the internet. Basically, that's my exposure to things. I was involved this year with the Great Guitar Build Off, and seeing just how creative these luthiers from around the world were, and how many different takes on the same instrument there is. I mean, it's unlimited, and it's whether it's materials or execution of those materials. It just blows me away, the creativity that you can have, and have an instrument that works. Because really, all you got to do is get your scale length to make sure everything's straight, right? That's it. Everything else comes into play, obviously, with other factors, but it's kind of cool that there's a lot of latitude.
Yeah, right on. Before I forget, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. I have one question before I ask you about the NAMM show. I was trying to lock down all these things.
Sure.
Sitting here listening quiet. Crosstalk.
I have a tendency to talk. Once you get
it's quite fine.
You got to shut me off.
It's quite fine. Yeah, crosstalk kind of muddies the waters for a minute, and then and then it's back to normal. But I noticed that you used Hipshot, and that you were using hardware and lace pickups. And what drove you to those decisions? And my reason for asking this is I feel like builders will either choose a comfortable recipe and stick with it, or they really won't settle. And there's everywhere in between, and I definitely fall into all those categories myself. But what shaped those decisions for you as a luthier?
For me, it was I kind of experimented for a while with a lot of different kind of unknown componentry with regard to things like tuners, and kept seeing that I like the aspect of locking tuners. And I noticed that all of these generic locking tuners that were out there were all being kind of compared to Hipshot tuners. Or, obviously Wilkinson's are Hipshots, just under a different name. And so I bought my first set of Hipshot tuners and was pleasantly surprised with it. Quality was good. A number of people that I had put it through its paces were like, oh, I like this. They're good. They're stable tuners. They don't detune. Not to say that all of them are perfect. And then kind of I got into using more Hipshot products. It was when I got involved with the Great Guitar Build Off, really. And I reached out to Hipshot, and reached out to Oscar, and he was like, hey, wait, what can I help you with? And it was like that went a long way. It was like somebody that did, because I had reached out to other companies and never got a response, right? And so I went, okay, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. And I like some of, I love the look of the baby grand piano bridges. They're just so different and so cool. So that was something that kind of brought me to that. As far as pickups go, kind of Lace was a first choice for me. They're based out of my hometown in Southern California, where I grew up. And so I knew about them for quite a while. And I liked some of the stuff that they were doing that was not your normal looking pickup. The Illuminatones, I liked the sound. I liked the looks on them. So that's how I kind of have done it. And I haven't settled completely on everything. I do, though, have a tendency to lean more towards Hipshot products at this point, because they're working for me. They're dependable, and they are, for me, they've been a good company to work with, because if there is an issue, I can get it resolved pretty quickly. That's been a good relationship so far. Hopefully not my last relationship, but it's a good one.
Right on. And I've kind of lived in a bubble for a long time, just doing my own thing. So I'm not familiar with the Great Guitar Build Off. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, this was the second or the third year of it. It's put on by Crimson Guitars out of Great Britain. And it's basically I guess it's a competition. You get basically about 8 months to build. There's different categories. There's scratch build, there's professional build, there's a kit build category, there's an open category that basically you could build anything you want. And you build your guitar, you document it. You document it on, this year it was all done on YouTube. So you put up videos that documented your build. Then you documented it all photographically, submitted all of it. Each builder has basically a page. And then at the end, all the builders, everybody who is involved in the competition then votes on their top 3 guitars that they like. So, it's the first time that I had ever done anything like that. And for me, it was more of a motivation type of thing. It was like, you know what, you got a deadline, you got to get something done, and you got to be creative and kind of do something that you think is going to appeal, in some way. And so that's why I did it. I did it more for my own kind of satisfaction and to push myself as a builder. And it was fun. It was a fun little project to do. They announced all of the winners a few weeks back, and it was some beautiful stuff. The 2 guys from the U.S., 1 guy from Europe that were in the scratch build category. Another Albuquerque luthier, Doug Otto, was in it also. He was part of this competition with his submission. So yeah, it was fun. It was a good little thing to do while trying to build other things.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. That's, I guess anything that's building community is there like some sort of prizes involved, or?
So what they did is they had a number of different prizes that happened during the competition, like, best video or, best humorous or whatever, things like that. And then the winners in each one of the categories, there were sponsors that were, things like sanders and tooling and chisels and things like that they would win. And then if you wanted to, you could also put your guitar in there and put it up for an auction if you wanted. And all the money basically that was raised through this whole competition was for a number of musical charities around the world. So a lot like, schools, music initiatives, things like that. And then everything that came in as far as if you put your guitar up for auction, all that money raised went to whatever charity was your charity that you had picked. So it was cool.
Yeah, that is really neat. Who comprises the jury? Is it everyone votes on everything, or is it like a team?
So it was basically all of the entrants. So for example, I was in the scratch category, and there were, I can't remember now how many entrants there were. And it was more than a couple hundred entrances that were in that. And so you basically, anybody who entered was able to vote. So you voted on the best in categories, and you could vote across other categories also. And then they did have a thing where people could join as like associate members to the competition, and then they could vote also. And they were basically, that money came in and then was distributed to the charities also. So yeah, the majority of the voting was done by other builders that were in your category basically.
Oh, interesting.
And so yeah, it was different. I think in years past, I think they had a committee that maybe did it. Like I said, I'm not real familiar how they did it in the first 2 years, but they this year for 2023, that's how they did it.
Sounds pretty neat.
Yeah.
So we touched on instrument design. We touched on your participation in this event, which I'm also sure helps get you on the map. Get people to know who you are. Where would you like to have Sadilah Guitars in 2 years?
I would love to have a steady backlog of orders, which would be really nice. For myself personally, it's a transition that I would love to be able to make at some point from my current real job, and make a transition into something that I can do that can, bring in income and, just get more people out there to know who I am and to grow as a builder. But I would definitely would love to have a steady backlog of people who want my instruments. That would be the best. And whether I still am, doing what I currently do as my real job, then I would do that. If not, if it got busy enough and I could swing it, I can do something else. So yeah.
Right on. And I like to ask everyone on the show, what is your current gig? Because not all of us are building from home full time. Most of us have side gigs, full-time jobs, so what are you doing in your adult life?
In my real life, I'm a dentist.
Oh, right on.
So I own a dental office, and it as my wife says, it funds my working on teeth, funds my guitars, and funds my ability to build guitars. And retirement from dentistry is on the horizon. And so I'm looking to see what my next transition is going to be. And that's why I'm working as hard as I can now to do the things that I'm doing in the guitar world, to try to just, if I can transition from one to the other and be happy and do the things I want to do, I would love to do that. I don't get enough time or as much time as I would love to devote to things, because obviously I have commitments that prevent me from being a builder full time. And again, I'm new. I'm really, really new in this world, and so I'm trying to get my name out there and trying to get people to be knocking on my door and asking me to build stuff for them. That's really where I'm going and where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Cool, man. Right on. I can get with that. Do you have any local artists you're looking for? So this is kind of like multiple parts. So that's the first part. Second part is, do you ever make something with a type of music or artist in mind? Or, has it been the opposite where you kind of made something and a local artist was like, oh, that's for me?
I'd say the latter, just what you said,
Okay.
more that than anything. Probably in the future, it may change and morph, and that's the beautiful thing about what we do, is that things can change a lot. I mean, I like to get my instruments out into people's hands, and I go to where there's live music all the time, and I'm constantly, hey, I got a guitar in the car, you want to give it a try tonight, kind of thing. And a lot of musicians will be like, no, I'm cool. Other ones will be like, yeah, bring it in. Let me see what it is. I try to make contact with musicians that I know are going to be playing someplace and send them an email, to their contact info, and just be like, hey, I build guitars. I'm local. This is what I do. Check out my website. If you'd like to try something out, I'd be more than happy to bring it down and, let you play with it. For me, that's kind of my modus operandi for getting the word out right now, is I want to get things in people's hands, because then I can get immediate feedback, and then people can go, oh yeah, I like this. Tell me more. Right. So I don't know if it's the right approach, but it seems to be a good approach for me right now.
Yeah, if it's working, why not? Are there any players that you've seen that you were pretty impressed with that you're looking to collaborate with?
Ooh, I'm absolutely horrible with names, and so I'm not going to be able to come up with anybody in particular. There are some really talented people that I've seen and haven't really made contact with, and would love to get my instruments in some of their hands. There's a band called the Martini Tones. I don't know if you know them or not, or have ever heard them. They are a kind of a Ventures style band, and I would love those guys to do it. I saw them at Marble one night. They were playing, and I gave them a flyer for the Invitational, and they were going to come by, and I don't think they made it, but those guys, one of the most talented musicians. These guys were top notch, and they were local guys just having a good time, And so I'm always on the look. I'm I go to places, I go to some of the dive places to kind of see. And I love all genres of music, so I'm not really tied into one or the other. I feel that an instrument in the right hands can do anything. And I think that's kind of cool. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's more, I just want to get my stuff in somebody's hands and let them be creative with it. And then, if they decide, hey, you know what, I would really love this or this, then we can talk. But that's kind of how I do it.
Right on, yeah. Humble brag. When I was at Santa Cruz Guitar Company, got to make some guitars for Noki Edwards from the Ventures.
Yeah.
And, we did a custom line for him. I think it was called like the Hitchhiker or something.
Nice.
It's been so long, it's a little hazy, but he was an interesting character, and he'd come in to pick up the guitars and play. And he was very good friends with Richard, and it was kind of cool to meet a legend like that. And like he was just really friendly, and it was pretty awesome. And the artists that would roll through there that we made guitars for and that we got to interact with, that to have that opportunity was quite tremendous. And I'm grateful for it every time these memories come up, and they're coming up more and more lately, for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing everything that you have. Here's a question for you. I kind of skipped over it, but what with everything that you've shared, everything that we've learned about you, what would you say your superpower is?
Ooh.
This is the one that catches people sometimes, or they're ready for it.
It does. I think it depends on who you talk to. My superpower around the house is I can read my wife's mind sometimes. And we kind of have this connection where we always come up with the exact same thing at the same time. It's kind of scary in some respects, but I don't know if I have a superpower. I think I read people well, and I think I have a good sense of what is appealing, I guess, in whatever aspects it is, whether it's things that I create, things that I do, the way I decorate something or furniture that I like or things like that. I think I appeal to the masses somewhat in things that are, and I don't know why, and I've always been kind of able to do that, that I can say, well, I like this. And then, I have a large number of people that go, oh, yeah, I really like that too. Rather than them going, oh, that's just crazy. I don't understand it. So I don't know if that's a superpower. But yeah, that's a tough question. I'm going to have to think about that. It might be interview number 2 that I'll have a good answer for you on that.
Yeah, that'd be a good follow-up.
Or like I said, my wife, Anna Marie, will definitely tell you that reading her mind is.
Yeah, that's a great connection to have too. That's something that's very important, along with communication, with family, when there's family involved, because I think a lot of times, from like past students and friends, luthier friends, we get kind of fixated in the shop, and next thing you know, we're in trouble. We're in trouble with the missus or with the partner, and it's and then it's like, oh yeah, I gotta lay off. And so to be able to communicate and just have that, that foresight, that's great. It really helps balance things out. Do you have any planned builds that are specifically for the show, this upcoming show in June? I'm just curious, and we kind of talked about it briefly. How will you be challenging yourself as a luthier for this next upcoming show?
I'm working on some semi-hollow bodies, and they're things that I really haven't done much before. Everything that I've really done has been solid body guitars. So I'm doing that. I'm taking both the Strega model and the Demona model and doing a version on both of those that will be semi-hollow body with figured drop tops. So a little bit different. That's kind of my main focus. I want to see if I can do it, see what the response is, see how they come out. And then some basses. I want to play around a little more with that because that kind of turned me on a bit, that I was like, oh, this is cool. It's a little different.
Yeah. What did you like about the basses?
The scale and the size, which I don't know. It's kind of, I love working on something that was more, not extremely, bigger than a conventional electric guitar, but the scale is a little bit bigger, what do you call it? Like a 1.5 scale almost, going where neck and headstock and things and body are all just a little bit bigger. I don't know, for some reason that resonated with me. And now I'm starting to think I built, pretty much a very traditional P-bass style guitar. And now I want to just take that body and do something different. And I'm still working on, multiple drafts of drawings and cutouts to figure out what I want to do. But it's just, for me, it was just kind of something I never really thought of, because my brother, who lives in California, plays bass and has played in bands and things like that. And he's always like, you should build a bass. You should build a bass. I'm like, no, I don't want to build a bass. I have no reason to build one. I don't know. And then he was like, no, you got to build one. And so I finally did. And then I was like, oh, I should have been building these things all along because they're kind of cool. So I don't know. I'm just experimenting with it. It's just something that's different and it's fun. But yeah, those two things. I mean, the semi-hollow bodies, I'm going to try to push more inlay work and try to push my own development on that because I just love that, and using different woods to complement each other with that. And then also pulling in, like I said, kind of the crushed stones that are in resin, because I like that contrast of natural wood and natural stone. I think it just, it works really well together. So, so those are what I'm working on right now, and trying to hammer out the details. And then finishes. I'm working on finishes, as we've talked about, to see what strikes my fancy. So I'm sure there'll be some disappointing days of experimentation, and there'll hopefully be some days of elation also.
Yeah, when I was a baby, we had to do our inlays with the jeweler's saw, and then kind of figure out how to make the pocket, get it nice and clean. And I sort of came up thinking that this was the only way to do it, and did not enjoy it at all. And eventually made the decision, this is not for me. How are you approaching guitar inlay? Are you using like some sort of CNC machine? Are you kind of going about it the old school way?
No, I don't have I thought about doing it the old school way, and then I was like, it just looks miserable. I don't think I would really like that. So I use a Shaper Origin to do my inlay work. So I'm playing around with that. And for those of you that don't know what it is, basically like a handheld CNC. Basically, it looks like a router on a bass. You can create an SVG file in Illustrator or Inkscape, and then import it into the unit. And then basically it will allow you then to cut your inlay. It'll cut not only the inlay in the body, but then it'll cut the inlay piece that goes into it with incredible accuracy. So it takes a lot of that, as you said, jeweler saw work. You are limited really to woods or softer metals with that. So anything that can be cut with a router bit, basically. I'm sure there are people doing other things with it. I know that there are builders that use it to do pick guards and a lot of different things. And then you can also use it to do your regular routes, whether it be a neck pocket, whether it be you can route a whole neck with it, you can route a whole body with it if you want. I don't do it that way. I don't use it in that way, but I know that there are people out there that do, and literally just have a giant SVG file that is the whole body of the guitar and all the routes and everything. And they just boom, sit, and it all comes out. The only thing it can't do is it can't route 3-dimensional. So it really is only a one-dimensional or 2-dimensional router. So it's a little bit different from a regular CNC, obviously. But I like using it for doing my inlay stuff. Makes it easy. My logos on my headstock I use that to cut out route out the Sadilah logo, and then I can either fill it with resin, fill it with stone, fill it with wood, whatever I want. So it gives a lot of options. So it's just something, I picked one up, I used about a year and a half ago, and just thought, well, how can I use this? How can it help benefit me and maybe get me to do something that do it more efficiently? I think that was the biggest thing, because I had tried doing, traditional inlay with basically almost a Dremel and a base, and then played around a little bit with a jeweler saw and really just hated doing that. I was like, I just don't have the patience to do that. And I love and I appreciate and have all the admiration for those people that can do it, and especially super intricate stuff. I'm just like, wow, to lock yourself into a project for the amount of time that it takes to put that puzzle piece together. It's like stained glass. It's something I don't think I could ever do. So.
Yeah, and to plug Albuquerque Exotic Woods, they are a dealer for the Shaper CNC.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Routers. And so anybody in the greater Albuquerque area, or passing through, if you wanted to check that out, John's got a great understanding of that router, and it's pretty cool to see it at work. And we'll use it on some custom stuff, custom projects, because we do a bit of custom work in the shop. And it's a really cool shop. It's a family-owned wood shop here in Albuquerque, and family-owned and family-run. And I'm happy to be a part of that team. We have a pretty decent selection of domestic and exotic hardwoods, softwoods, and it's always changing, always growing, especially based on requests from customers. The custom work they do is pretty cool. It's always a great opportunity to get to learn from different types of craftspeople and their approach to certain situations. And when you see the work that comes out of that shop, and the shop tools are like a few routers and a big bandsaw and a big planer and some clamps.
Wow.
and the work that they're able to pull off with so few tools.
Yeah.
Like there's times where I'm just like, I need to do this at my shop. Like I need a joiner. I need, and they're able to pull it off. It's pretty amazing. And that's, just a plug for Albuquerque Exotic Woods here in Albuquerque once again. I vaguely remember you talking about making pickups. Was that you?
Yeah, I'm getting into it. It's something that I want to do. I'm fascinated by the process, and I think for me, it's kind of an extension of what I do. What I would love to be able to do is to continue to be able to build more and more of the guitar myself. And I think there's obviously some limits. I'm not going to be pulling out the lathe to make my own tuners and things like that. But the more stuff that I can do, I think for me is more exciting. And it's also going to give me a chance to play around in a less expensive experimentation way to figure out what type of pickup is best for what I build. And so I'm looking forward to that journey. And I'm also, looking forward to the relaxation zen of winding a pickup.
If you want to call it that.
I don't know. I keep seeing, I watch a ton of videos and stuff on it, and I keep people saying, oh yeah, I just get into it, and maybe I'm just, fooling myself, and it's going to be more headache, and I may have, I may have my winder up for sale. I don't know, but I want to do it. And I've had a couple people ask me, oh, have you ever thought about winding your own pickups? And I was like, yeah, I never really thought about it before, when I could just go buy one. But then I started thinking, well, why not? Why shouldn't I do that? And so, yeah, I think to me, it's kind of a natural extension of what I'm doing. And if I can continue to, to add to what I build and create something that's unique and special, then hey, it's a win-win. So yeah, I'm going to give it a whirl.
And in regards to pickups, are you going to be doing anything custom with the look, or will you be following sort of the traditional, just kind of using what's available and just winding to your own recipes? What do you have a game plan?
Yeah, my game plan is first be successful at making a pickup that creates sound. And then I have some ideas. I just need to figure out from an electromagnetic point of view, does it work? And yeah, I would like to make something that's doesn't look like it came off the shelf. I would really like that. I'm very impressed when I see pickups that are out there that are boutique pickups that, use different materials than you normally see. Shapes. There's somebody online right now that I've been following that's created a bass pickup that looks like a lightning bolt, and it literally is. Everything is in that shape, and then you got somebody to create covers that fit over it, and it's cool. Nobody else does something like that, right? So yeah, I would like to do something that's different, but I'm going to start off. I mean, I know that it's a learning process, and I'm going to just start out with, single coils and kind of play around. See, for me, it's going to be difference in how to wind, how many winds, how much I scatter, how much I try to get it as laid on evenly as I can. It's going to be, obviously there's a learning curve. And so I want to get the basics down first. And if I can prove to myself that I can make something that sounds decent, then I can start pushing the boundaries on that, because I know that I've got a basis. If I try to jump into something that's out of the ordinary right now, other than aesthetics, obviously, because you can do a lot with covers and things like that. I think if you try to jump into that's trying to do too many new things at once. And you don't know if the reason you're failing is because it's something that could never work, or it's in your rudimentary way that you are trying to do something from the start. So I think that you can't change too many things at once. Otherwise, you don't know what you did wrong.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that, especially from a production standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely keeping the processes nice and tight, keeping the steps tight, and sticking to the plan definitely helps you figure out, what to change next, or if you nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I look forward to seeing what pickups you come up with, and pickups are like, God, I remember when there was nothing available, and there was one winder on the market, and it was from StuMac, and I bought it, and I hated it, and I sold it, and was like, I need something better, so I made one, and it was just slightly different, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say my pickups are crude at best. They work, and I was able to come up with I was able to have a sound in mind and get it, and get the look that I wanted, and mission accomplished. Like, it was just something very simple, and then I see what so many other builders are doing, and it's like so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love finding specialists that this is what they do. And it just blows my mind. And I've had the opportunity to work with so many talented pickup makers. And now I don't even think I can make enough guitars to be able to support these pickup makers by, buying a set.
Yeah.
And the pickup makers that are coming to this next show are already going to be amazing.
I can't wait.
I'm just like, man, I got to quit looking for ways to spend more money. Quite simply. So is there go ahead and share your socials and your website and anywhere we can find you, and be able to check you out and show you some love.
Yeah, absolutely. On Instagram, it's just at Sadilah Guitars. And then my website is sadilahguitars.com. And so that kind of shows things that I've built, things that I'm currently building. I try to keep it updated as regularly as I can. So those are kind of my two things. I've ventured much more into posting regularly on Instagram. So if you follow me, then you'll have to see what I throw out there. And there's lulls, and then there's times when you're going to get hit with a bunch of stuff. And like I said, keep my website going. And all my contact information is on my website. So you got questions, it makes it easy. It's a nice, easy contact form, and throw some questions out at me or ask me questions. Or if you're a musician out there and you want to give one of my guitars a try, just call me up. I'm easy. I'll get it out to you, and you can put it through its paces and see if it's something that you like. And then if it is, I can make you something special.
I'll have to definitely take you up on that offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't get to play any of the guitars at the last show, and I love playing guitars. I think I loved guitars more when I started working on them, and mostly because I got to see so many, and sort of getting reacquainted with that love at this show. I was like, man, I wish I had the time to just pause the show and we could all go check each other's stuff out and try it out and ask questions. And unfortunately, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But hopefully in getting to know everyone, I can make the time to get to everyone's shop and say hi and see how they do things. And for me, I just like stopping by a shop and checking it out. I don't really have any questions anymore. It's just more like, oh wow, this is so cool. And like, very nice. I wish I had space like this.
I think that sense of community it's so powerful. As I said, kind of going back to the notion that, you're kind of stuck on an island yourself, and it's nice to have human contact. And that was, that was one of the things that was really cool for me at the last show, was meeting all these people that I only really knew by name. Right. And only knew by what I saw on maybe a website or a posting, especially on Instagram and stuff. And I didn't really know. And then all of a sudden, you sit down, you talk, and, you're talking about everything. Right. And that to me was the greatest thing. And what I would love, for us to do, especially for all of us that are locally, I'd love to have, do something that's on a regular basis, just get together somewhere for, socially, and just, spitball and just have fun. Like you said, away from having to worry about a show kind of thing.
Yeah, that came up from a few different people, and not to complain about anything, but putting this event together, and a lot of times, if you've never done something like this, which I know you have, it's a lot of work.
It is.
It's a lot more work than you would think it would be. So the podcast was sort of one way to do this, and also kick something off of my bucket list. I've been talking about putting a podcast together for years, and so I finally checked that box, and I'm getting this sort of practice done and going and going and going, hopefully. But yeah, getting a mixer together, or a hangout, I just was like, I don't have the bandwidth for this.
All right, we'll talk, and maybe I'll throw myself into the mix and be the party chairperson. So
yeah. Another thing that came up was organizing an open mic night that would feature a builder, like once a month.
Yeah.
And I'm still kicking that around. It's just everything turns into, if you want to do it like in an efficient way and kind of get people to come out, it takes quite a bit of work.
Yes.
And so, we do have a team that's helping us get this next show together. And they'll probably be helping us put together some sort of open mic night if we can. And if not, at least, we'll start working at organizing that for in between shows coming up, because we will be doing another show in December. Right now we're looking at, I think, right around 50 vendors for this next show, as well as all the live musicians and music schools that will be participating. So it's going to be a pretty good sized show. I think we're going to run into the issue of how do we fit everybody in here. And I'd rather have that problem than have a
Yes.
bunch of empty space. So, we'll see how it goes. But thank you for taking the time, Chuck. It was great to talk to you. I really
Absolutely.
appreciated the conversation. And, who knows, maybe we'll have you back before the next show.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Thank you for, inviting me to do this. This has been great. And like I said, just having a great time. Looking forward to all of our interactions together. And you and I will definitely be getting together soon. And I'll get you over here to let you play around a bit.
Cool, man. Take care.
All right, you take care. Have a great one. Thanks.
Big thank you to Chuck for taking the time to do the interview. And it was nice to get to know him a lot better than, just kind of hanging out at the last guitar show, trying to sneak in conversations. And, I look forward to making it over to his shop. And I don't know if I have the bandwidth, then, maybe I'll shoot a little short video or something like that. I think getting to see people in their shops, for me as a luthier, it's like I connect the space with the person, instead of the person with the label. And it's just such a nice experience as a luthier, as I'm sure people in different fields like going to different shops and stuff like that. So anyways, I'm Perry from Unga Guitars, and thank you for joining me for this episode of the High Desert Luthiery podcast, and I will see you in the next one.